Good afternoon, sir. Can you see and hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you, and likewise. Yes, may the witness be sworn. It's Graham Allen, please.
You'd like to take that in your right hand and repeat after me. I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and
nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Take a seat.
Good afternoon, Mr. Allen. My name is Jason Beer, as you know, and I ask questions on behalf of the inquiry.
Good afternoon.
Can you give us your full name, please?
Graham Allen.
Thank you very much for coming to give evidence today, and thank you very much for the assistance that you've already provided the inquiry in the provision of your witness statement. I wonder whether you could take out the witness statement, please. It should be in a binder next to you.
Can't see it.
Have a look behind you on the shelf.
No.
Okay, if you just wait there. Apologies for this, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Now, where were we? If you take out that binder, there should be a witness statement in your name and dated the 4th of August. Tab A1. 19 pages in length with your signature at the end of it.
That's
Is
correct.
that your signature?
Yes,
And are the contents of that witness statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
they are.
A copy of that witness statement is going to be uploaded to the inquiry's website, and I'm therefore not going to ask you about every aspect of it, you understand?
Okay.
Your evidence, Mr. Allen, relates primarily to the development and then the operation of Horizon Online,
Yes.
topics that the inquiry intends to address in later phases of the inquiry. And so the questions I'm going to ask you about today are primarily for the purpose of seeking to assist the inquiry and understanding the roles that those involved in that process had in relation to Horizon Online, but also any crossover between it and Legacy Horizon as it became known, and to assist us in directing our investigations into some people who were in post in relation to both Legacy Horizon and Horizon Online. Do you understand?
Yes.
So the fact that I'm ignoring in my questions 90% of your witness statement doesn't mean we're not interested in it. We've got your evidence on it and we may come back to you later. Do you understand?
Okay. Yes.
Can we start, please, with your qualifications and experience, please? What were your qualifications? What are your qualifications?
I did a computer science degree at Portsmouth when it was a polytechnic. I think it switched to a university just after that, and then I took a graduate developer role at what was then ICL, and I have remained at ICL and then Fujitsu throughout my career, taking a variety of roles through application development.
And so I think you joined ICL, as it was then known, in 1991, is that right?
That's correct.
As a graduate developer, what did a graduate developer do?
At that time, I worked in ICL retail, so I took the skills that I had learnt at university and just worked developing retail applications.
Is that a developer the same as a programmer? Or
Yes, as a programmer, yes. Sorry.
Thank you. And so you've worked for the company and its predecessor, Incarnation, for the entirety of your working life, some 31 years now.
That is correct.
I think since January 2022, you have been the operations manager for the post office account at Fujitsu, is that
correct.
right?
Yes.
And what does the operations manager do?
To all intents and purposes, I run the applications teams, which was the role I had before January 2022, and my role just expanded into looking wider across the services that we deliver since January 2022 to assist my manager in terms of running the account and helping with those things.
And so far as concerns this inquiry, I think you first worked on the post office account in 2007, worked on it for 5 years until 2012, is that right?
That's correct.
That's the period that I'm going to ask you mainly questions about. You then didn't work on the post office account from 2012 until 2017, went back to the account in 2017 and have stayed there since.
Yes, that's correct.
As I say, we're interested in your role between 2007 and 2012. In which division within Fujitsu, as it had then become, did you work?
I worked in the application services division.
And can you describe what application services division means?
So basically the area of the company that focused on developing or supporting applications for various customers. So this collection of people whose skill sets were primarily around developing applications.
And what was your job title in that period?
Applications development manager.
And what did that involve, being an applications development manager?
In building and running the teams to deliver applications to our customers. So in varying roles, managing developers or primarily managing developers, or maybe sometimes test people or various parts of the life cycle depending on what the role required.
You've mentioned in that answer working with people,
Yes.
and in your statement you describe a management role with people.
Yes.
Was it mainly a human resources function, or did you become involved in the information technology itself?
So in the role with for the post office account, it was primarily a human resources role, but with an application, with the experience of knowing how to recruit application people or knowing how to assist people in solving technical problems, but not being the primary. My experience was not on how these particular applications were developed or the technology that was used to do them. It was around making sure that the people that I had in the teams had the skills to deliver the applications that we needed to do.
And how many people in the teams worked to you?
Approximately 100, 150 when I first started on the post office.
You give that figure in your witness statement, and you call them my development teams.
Yes.
How were they split?
So they were split into various teams supporting various parts of the applications. As I say in my witness statement, the project involved two major components as we were moving to Horizon Online, redeveloping a new counter application for the branches, and a separate part of the project which was migrating the data center applications from Horizon to Horizon Online.
And how were the numbers split as between those two purposes?
From recollection, it was probably about half and half, but I'm not 100% sure.
And to whom did you report?
So I reported to, I'm not clear on I can't remember the role, but I reported to a lady called, to an application develop an application. I don't know. Can I refer to the statement?
Yes, I think she's called Head of Applications.
Head of Applications, yes. So Head of Applications for the Post Office account. So she would have also had test leads and other parts of the life cycle working for her at that time.
And that was Barbara Perrick,
That was correct.
P-E-R-E-K, is that right?
That's correct.
And to whom did she report?
She reported, I believe, to the head of the Application Services Division, whose name I do not recall.
In your statement, you say at paragraph 9, you reported to Barbara Perrick,
Sorry.
who reported into the programme director, who at the time you joined was Martin Hughes.
Yes, so Barbara would have reported into both the Application Services Division at Fujitsu and also for the Post Office account, she would have reported to the Programme Director, Martin Hughes. Sorry.
What responsibility, if any, did you have for Legacy Horizon as it became known?
I had no responsibility for Legacy Horizon.
What knowledge, if any, did you have as to the operation of Legacy Horizon?
So none, other than I sat in the same office as people working on Legacy Horizon, so I may have heard, I may have heard information on Legacy Horizon, but it would have been on a, what's the word, just in terms of hearing it in the office, but I was not responsible for
office
it,
chat.
or office chat, but no direct information or knowledge.
When you arrived in 2007, did anyone tell you when you joined the team or began to manage the team about a problematic live trial and rollout for Legacy Horizon?
No.
When you joined the team in 2007 and managed the team in 2007, did anyone tell you about a series of serious errors, bugs and defects that had afflicted Legacy Horizon throughout its life?
No.
In order to develop Horizon Online and then migrate branches onto it, did you not have to have an understanding of the issues and difficulties that had beset Legacy Horizon?
No. The teams, the Legacy, the main parts of Horizon that we were developing was a brand new application. And as I say in my statement, actually the teams that were developing it were completely separate due to the contractual position between the parties, which I don't understand. Prior to that, we were...
Sorry, just stopping there. Could you just expand on what you meant there by the teams were entirely separate due to the contractual position as you understood it?
So Horizon was built on a system provided by Riposte, or was called Riposte. Actually, I'm not actually completely clear on the terminology there. And we were writing a brand new system to replace that counter application from scratch. And I believe to ensure that we did not have any copyright infringement, the instruction was to produce it with a completely set of people that couldn't possibly copy the previous solution. So it was going back to business requirements from the Post Office to write the solution new. So it was a completely replacement system in terms of the branch system.
That meant that you didn't have access to their code.
That's correct, yes.
Could you nonetheless not have been told about, I'll put it neutrally, some issues that had arisen in the operation of that code over the, by then, 7 or 8 year lifespan of Horizon?
Yes, I guess so. Whether the developers were aware of that or not, I don't know. Would it have helped? I'm not sure it would have done. All IT systems have problems, and part of the point of rewriting them is that you avoid writing those problems again.
If you know about the problems, sometimes easier not to replicate them?
Potentially. You
say in paragraph 15C of your statement please, which is WITN 048780100 at page 8. Thank you. This is, I should just look at the passage that this comes under. If we just go back a little bit, please. Thank you. You say, I can also recall the following issues. And then if we go forward to C, you say, there were challenges around explaining the requirements to the development teams in a way that allowed them to understand what they needed to do. For example, the Horizon Online counter application needed to be functionally equivalent to the legacy Horizon application, but to ensure no infringement of intellectual property rights, developers were not allowed access to the legacy Horizon application. How do you know about that Fujitsu developers were not allowed access to the programming code for legacy Horizon?
Because they often raised it as a challenge to understanding the requirements that they had, in that the level of detail may not have been sufficient, and without being able to refer back to how the system worked previously, they sometimes found it harder to interpret those requirements and write the new system. So it was one of those problems that made it take longer to write Horizon Online than anticipated.
I think you may have answered this already, but whose intellectual property rights were being guarded or asserted here?
I believe Riposte, or the company that owned Riposte. I'm not sure which is which.
And were you told that at the time?
Yes.
And can you explain why you would have wanted access to the programming code for Legacy Horizon in order to carry out your work?
It's one of the ways of a developer being able to identify how the system previously worked. And so ultimately, it's the final way if they can't work it out any other way.
Was the post office aware that Fujitsu developers were not able to access the programming code for Legacy Horizon?
I think I'm probably speculating, but I believe they would have known, yes.
What's the basis for your suggestion that they probably would have known?
Only that they were close enough to us at that point that I can't imagine that would not have been part of the conversation. I don't believe these conversations were ever sort of secret or within Fujitsu. So, but as I say, I couldn't say 100%.
Do you know Mr. Jenkins, Gareth Jenkins?
I do.
And for how long have you known him?
From the time, well, I can't recall the first time I met him, but he would have been working there at the point I started in 2007 until the point he retired, which I don't recall. May have been while I wasn't on the account. I'm not sure what day he left. But personally known him only probably really around. First time I can recall being aware of him was around when we were piloting. And we were, dealing with technical issues, which, as my statement says, I was more involved in.
And so certainly for the period 2007-2012, you would have worked with him.
Yes, and certainly around the 6 months of the rollout.
And what was his role when you worked with him?
He was a technical architect who was probably one of the people that understood how Horizon and Horizon Online was built.
And in the period 2007 to 2012, how frequent was your contact with him, allowing for the fact that it may have waxed and waned depending on what was being done?
As I was going to say, I think probably during the 6 months of the pilot and rollout, it was probably at least a few times a week. Before that and after that, probably rarely.
He's described in some of the material as, quote, distinguished engineer.
Yes.
What does that mean?
It's a title that Fujitsu gives to a certain set of our technical specialists. So there is a process that each year nominations are taken, and they are judged against their technical expertise, their knowledge of the marketplace, etc., things like that.
So it's a sort of an honour conferred on them within the company, bestowed
Yes.
within the company.
Yes.
Okay. He's also described as applications architect, or the applications architect, or an applications architect, depending on which document you look at. What is an applications architect, please?
So an applications architect is sort of a role or a grading that the system that the company uses. It is somebody who designs applications, so doesn't necessarily write the applications, or probably doesn't write the applications. So very much like an architect would design a building, it's the person that designs the applications. So not, and it's focused on the application, not the hardware or the infrastructure. Hence the term application.
Thank you. I think we can see from the documents that you would attend meetings with him. Mm-hmm. We've got some examples of that. Can we look, please, at Fujitsu 3092922, please?
Is that B?
It's right, it will come up on the screen.
Oh, will it? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can see notes of a meeting called Next Generation Implementation Issues of the 8th of February 2010 at Cotton, Warwick and Derby.
Yes.
And we can see that your name is listed about 10 in.
Yes.
And you're described as customer services, Fujitsu. Is that accurate?
So I think I'm described as development manager on the right.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I misread the lines.
That's okay.
Mr. Jenkins described as solution architect. Is that the same as applications architect?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And at this time, February 2010, how frequent was your contact with him?
Because of these issues, it was probably daily.
I think you would exchange emails with him with some regularity. Would that
Yes.
be right? I think we've got some examples in the disclosed material. I'm not going to go to them to show you an email where you exchanged an email with him. But you would receive documents from him as well. Can we look
Yes.
at some of those, please? Fujitsu 20217478, please. This is one of two documents I'm going to look at. You exhibit this to your statement. Mm-hmm. I think you'll remember. And the author, Gareth Jenkins, the date, 29th of January 2010. Mm-hmm. And if you just read through it, excuse me. And the question I'm going to ask is this about Horizon Online or Legacy Horizon?
This is about Horizon Online.
You'll see that the problem is identified, a basket being recorded twice in the accounts, the pink numbers given. The cause of the problem is a bug at the counter.
Correct.
And then can we look, please, at Fujitsu 20217489, please? That's the wrong tab. Sorry, my mistake. Fujitsu 20217480. Thank you. Look at the top again. Authorship, the same, Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
The date is in fact the same.
Yes.
And again, just look through it, please. If you look at the problem, for example, the problem was that when the balancing the last stock unit, the user was not prompted to clear their local suspense. This meant that attempting to roll over the branch failed due to local suspense not being clear. Again, is this to do with Horizon Online or Legacy Horizon?
Horizon Online.
And at what stage in the process are you here, namely end January 2010?
So I think we are in the initial pilots of the Horizon Online system.
To your knowledge, to your understanding, what was Mr. Jenkins' level of knowledge in relation to Legacy Horizon?
I don't actually know the answer to that, I'm afraid. I believe he was involved in Legacy Horizon, but I don't recall what he was involved in. Probably because my focus was on this.
Would he have been allowed to speak about it in the same room as you, given that if he did have knowledge, it might infringe somebody's intellectual property rights?
He would have been. I don't recall any instances where I was. So it was only the counter application that I've forgotten the word already. That the infringement would have been part on, and as I said, there are two major parts of the system. The main data center part was still the same, inherently the same system carried forward, updated and carried forward.
Did Mr. Jenkins ever to explain to you that he was providing witness statements in connection with criminal proceedings against sub-postmasters?
So I am aware of that now, and I would have been aware of it at some point, but I don't know. I can't recall exactly what point I was aware of. I was aware of that.
Would it have been whilst you were working on the account between 2007 and 2012, rather than when you came back to it in 17?
Yes, it would have been during that time I became aware that Fujitsu was involved in that process and that Gareth was part of that.
Can you help us as to how you became aware of that?
Probably the best description is to use the one you used before, office chit chat. Other than only that I became aware. Maybe there was an occurrence of when he had to go to court. I don't recall exactly, but.
Did Mr. Jenkins ever come and speak to you about any technical aspects of Horizon Online for the purpose of informing evidence that he was to give in a witness statement or in oral evidence in court?
No.
Were you present at any meetings at which either of those things were done?
No.
Are you aware of any process by which Mr. Jenkins was selected as a witness to give evidence in written and then oral form?
No.
Can we look, please, at Fujitsu 308-0534? You'll see the document title, Horizon Online Data Integrity. And then if we just skip down to the foot of the page, please. A little bit more, please. You'll see, thank you, you'll see the date of this version of the document as the 25th of November 2011. Mm-hmm. Then if we go to the top, please. You'll see that it's authored by Mr. Jenkins.
Yes.
Now, I think this is a document that you saw and contributed to at the time.
Yes, I don't recall it, but having read the document provided to me, yes, I can see that I'm recorded as commenting on it.
We can see that, I think, if we skip to page 3, please. Under document history, we can see that the first draft was 10 months or so beforehand, version 0.1. And in the second line, it says minor changes in response to feedback from Torsten Godseth and Graham Allen. And so I think that's what you were just referring to, is that right?
Yes.
Torsten Godseth, can you help us as to who he was?
So Torsten Godeseth was a post office architect at some point. He now works for Fujitsu. He changed roles at some point during Horizon Online. I can't recall the
You
exact
remember
time.
the year?
Not accurately, no.
Okay.
I was on the account, so it must have been 2010, 2012-ish, but I'm not 100% sure.
So Post Office Counters Limited employee who moved over to
Yes.
Fujitsu.
Yes.
Going back to the front page of the document, please. Having reread the document more recently, can you help us overall as to the purpose of this review or this report?
Only from what I've read in the document, and that it was, it appears from memory, from reading it over the weekend, it appears to be a description of the measures, well, as it says in the abstract, description of the measures built into Horizon Online to ensure its data integrity, and appears to be to brief KPMG, I think it said, on conducting an audit of that.
And so the abstract is accurate. It's a backward look at measures that are built into Horizon Online to ensure data integrity.
Yes.
And if we go forwards, please, to page 7. I think if we read the terms of reference together, Fujitsu would like to instigate an independent audit of the Horizon Online environment currently delivered to Post Office Limited to provide confidence that the solution has intrinsic security controls commensurate with the requirement for legal admissibility. This will enable a legal review of contract compliance. And then objective. Now that Horizon Online has been operational for 12 months, Fujitsu is undertaking a legal review of its compliance with its contract obligations, and in order to enable that, would like to undertake an independent assessment to demonstrate the adequacy of the security controls that have been designed into the system to provide assurance in the robustness of the audit of the transactional data that may be used as evidence in court. Can you recall what prompted this?
I can't. I say until I was provided with the document, I didn't even recall the document or being involved in commenting on it. I can see that I was, but so no, I can't recall.
Can you recall what your feedback was on the document?
I can't recall it, but I did have a look back through the previous versions of the document, and my comments were, I believe, a couple of typos or of that order of magnitude.
Is that with the assistance of Fujitsu that you went back and looked at?
I have access to the documentation management system, so yes, in that respect, with the assistance of Fujitsu, yes.
So you did that at work, did you?
Yes.
And at this time, what was your relationship at work with Gareth Jenkins? Why was he the author of the document, to your knowledge?
Again, I would have to speculate because I can't recall exactly in his role as an application architect.
And Torsten Godeseth, what was his role at the time?
I couldn't be 100% sure. Again, likely to be an application architect, purely based on the fact that Torsten commented on an early draft. I suspect he was part of Fujitsu at that time, but I'm speculating again, would need to be checked.
Why were you asked to give feedback?
That I don't know. I would have been application delivery manager at that time, and I guess it was considered to be part of my role to do that. I can't give you any better answer than that, I'm afraid.
Can you try and help us?
Yes, definitely.
And tell us, what about your job would have made it appropriate for you to have been asked to give feedback on a document concerning the integrity of Horizon Online that will ensure the requirements for legal admissibility in court proceedings were met?
Okay. I don't think it would have been in relation to that, but clearly if there had been or were any changes required out of any audit, then it would have been my teams that would have had to have made those changes, and hence there's some governance responsibility on me to check that the documentation is correct. The other likely thing, as I've said in my statement, is my role as mainly a we called it a human resources type thing, is clearly I have years of experience of application development, and I can interpret or bridge the gap between descriptions and technical people to cross-check that the information is correct. So it would have been on some sort of consulting or responsibility for application delivery role.
If we just look at the top of the page there, underneath the heading, it said that it's prepared, and this appears on every page, commercial in confidence, and then legally privileged. Do you know why that was?
I don't know.
Were you aware of any litigation being taken against either the Post Office or Fujitsu at this time?
No.
Can we go over to page 8, please? You'll see there's a list of stakeholders and their roles and responsibilities. Can I have your help, please, on a little more than the 2 or 3 word descriptions that are given for each of the people there? Stephen Long,
So
Fujitsu or Post Office employee?
So Stephen Long was a Fujitsu employee. He would have been the head of the account at that point, hence the project sponsor, I'm assuming.
Yes. James Davidson.
So James Davidson, as it says there, Service Operations Director. So James was responsible for all of our service delivery aspects, if that makes sense. Sorry.
There's a tendency in IT to have 5 or 6 words, one of which is always service,
Yes.
some of which are applications, and they're switched around in different orders. So could you explain maybe what the person actually does?
Yeah, so James would have been ultimately responsible for our support teams, our service teams in maintaining the day-to-day service, and the system was up and running, and that type of service delivery. I would have had a line or a dotted line into him as part of my team's ultimately delivering applications, would have had some responsibility to the support of the service.
Thank you, that's helpful. Torstein Godseth, architecture. Can you help a little more on what his role was at this time?
I can't from that description, no, and I don't recall what Torstein did that.
Gareth Jenkins, you've already explained. Mike Deaton, again, Fujitsu employee.
Yes.
Project leader, was that for Horizon Online?
I don't know exactly what it would have meant in the context of this document. He was responsible for making delivering the project that this document was part of. So like a project manager, project leader, I believe.
Edward Phillips.
I don't recall that name, don't recall that name at all.
And Ian Howard of security.
I don't recall that name either. So I don't actually know whether he was Fujitsu or Post Office. I'm assuming from as you pointed out, the legally privileged title bit that they are all Post Office employees, but other than the ones I've mentioned, I can't confirm.
Do you remember a position within Fujitsu of Chief Information Security Officer?
Yes.
Can you recall whether Ian Howard occupied that position?
I can't. I'm only assuming from what I read there that is the role, but I don't know.
And then under paragraph 1.5, constraints, assumptions and risks, it says all work will be undertaken under an agreed and signed non-disclosure agreement. Can you help us? Can you recall who was that required by? The Post Office, Fujitsu, or somebody else?
I can't recall. I can only assume that, as this mentions another third party, KPMG, that it is with them, but that is an assumption.
Sorry, you because the report we're going to see in a moment mentions KPMG.
Yes.
That they required it.
Yes. Well, the Fujitsu required it with KPMG, but that's I am speculating there. I don't actually know.
Was it normal when a group of 7 or 8 Fujitsu employees got together on a project that they had to sign a non-disclosure agreement?
No. No, my experience of non-disclosure agreements within Fujitsu are always around third parties.
Either third party has to sign it.
But both. So either examples I've seen in other places are the customer, and all of the parties involved sign them, or Fujitsu and a third party they're involving in some work signs them, depending on who the discussions are. So I can't tell you what that means in that context, I'm afraid, of this document.
Did you sign a non-disclosure agreement?
Not that I recall, no.
Do you know what you would have been forbidden from disclosing in discussing the issue that this paper relates to?
No.
Do you know from whom you would have been forbidden to disclose such information?
No,
For example, the client, post office.
If other than all parties that weren't part of the non-disclosure agreement, just as per my standard training, if you like. But I don't know what the non-disclosure agreement was signed between, was signed between as part of this document.
Okay. If we go on to the next page, please, page 9. The document has been prepared for KPMG to enable scoping for an independent assessment of data integrity controls around Horizon Online in order that legal advice can be obtained from in-house counsel about Fujitsu's contractual liability. Just trying to flesh that context out a bit. Contractual liability to who?
It can only be post office as far as I can see from that document.
Do you remember the context in which this exercise, this project was undertaken? That there was an issue of Fujitsu's contractual liability to post office?
Over and above our contractual liability to support prosecutions or support the evidence to prosecutions, no, I can't think of any.
What do you recall about the contractual liability to support prosecutions?
An awareness of it. Other than that, nothing.
Where did you gain that awareness from?
Conversation.
With who?
I don't know. Whoever I was working for at the time, I assume as part of this document, but I don't know.
What was your understanding of Fujitsu's contractual liability to support prosecutions?
My only understanding was that we did send witnesses to support post office in those in some cases, but that is all I knew of at the time.
Was there ever, to your knowledge, in the development of Horizon Online, any look back to the stage before then, i.e. before the witness gets dispatched to court, to see how you design the system in order to make the data have integrity, in order that the witness can go to court and speak to the integrity of the data that the system produces?
Don't really understand the question.
Okay. You said that your understanding of the contractual obligation was to provide support to prosecutions. Mm-hmm. I asked you more about that, and you said you knew that we sometimes sent witnesses to court. I was asking, was there any discussion in which you were involved at a stage prior to the dispatch of a witness to court about the design of the system with a focus on this data might be used for prosecutions?
Not that I recall specifically, no, other than an awareness that the system was designed to be integral, and that was what the evidence was provided on.
When you say that the system was designed to be integral, do you mean the system was designed to have integrity?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
2 paragraphs on, it says, note that this document only covers Horizon Online. It does not cover the original Horizon system, which is specifically excluded from this exercise. And then the scope of this paper is restricted to showing, last paragraph, the integrity of the audit trail and that it accurately reflects the transactions entered at the counter. Were you aware of whether a similar document or process or project existed in relation to legacy Horizon?
No.
I.e. writing down, capturing in one place what elements the system has to ensure that the integrity of the audit trail and to ensure that the system accurately reflects transactions entered at the counter?
I can't say that I wasn't. I'm answering that on the basis that it could have been discussed at the point that this came out, that this was a continuation of that service, but I don't recall one way or the other whether it was specifically discussed.
Okay, I just want to show you very quickly a document, please. Fujitsu 308 0526.
Yeah, so I was provided this document just before the hearing,
Yeah.
and it that's the first time I've seen it, and it does appear to be, as you say, the predecessor or the same document for the Horizon system as the other one was for Horizon Online.
If we just check the date first, if you look at the foot of the page, 2nd of October 2009, and then if we go up to the top of the page, the document title is Horizon Data Integrity. This one's prepared commercial in confidence, but without prejudice. The abstract describes the document as describing the measures that are built into Horizon to ensure data integrity. Note that it only covers Horizon and not Horizon Online. And the author is once again Mr. Jenkins. So would you agree this appears to be an equivalent document in terms of its scope, not necessarily its purpose, for Horizon, Legacy Horizon, rather than Horizon Online?
It does appear to be, yes.
Thank you. And then if we just look over the page, please. So over 2 pages to page 3. You'll see the document history there. You're not mentioned in this, or so far as I can see, any other part of the document. Would that reflect the fact of your lack of involvement in Legacy Horizon?
It would, yes. I wouldn't be expected to be part of this document, given it was scope was Horizon.
And there appears next to version 1 to be a record that this document, version 1, is available for release to the post office. If I can have your help, please, under review details, can you help us as to who Susie Kirkham was?
So Susie Kirkham was, I want to say, account manager. So she would have worked for the head of the account, whatever it was called in those days. Her role, as I recall it, was primarily sales, although clearly, as per that, I wouldn't expect that to be the role she was performing here. So she had an overall view of the of aspects of the account.
Jeremy Worrell.
So the terminology there, CTO, means Chief Technology Officer. I don't recall Jeremy in that role. However, he was one of the senior architects. I wouldn't put the word application in front of him. I believe he was wider than that.
So far, ICL employees or
Yes,
Fujitsu,
definitely.
Fujitsu.
Yes.
Guy Wilkerson rather.
Yeah, so commercial director, as it says there, so responsible for contracts, commercial relationships.
And did you know LaToya Smith?
I didn't. Well, if I did, I don't recall her name. So from that, it looks like she worked for Guy.
Amanda Crabe.
I recognise the name. The role there looks like a wider role within Fujitsu as it was then, I think, but I don't recall.
And David Smith, do you recognise that name?
I do. So David was, I think, ultimately responsible for the delivery of Horizon Online within Post Office. That's the role I remember him in.
Given your what you told the chair about your position in relation to Legacy Horizon, I'm not going to ask you questions about the detail of that document. Were you aware of articles in the media in May 2009 about the integrity or lack of it of both Legacy Horizon and Horizon Online?
I don't recall being aware at that time of those, no.
Can you now recall whether you had knowledge of the Computer Weekly article of May 2009? 11th of May 2009, written by Rebecca Thompson.
No, I do not recall being aware of that at the time.
Can you remember any discussion within your team or managers and directors above you over any need to commission any work as a result of the article, which was exceedingly critical of Horizon after May 2009, at the same time that you were developing a new Horizon system?
I don't recall that, no, although the timing of the documents, makes me speculate that that may have been a result, but I do not recall that being discussed at the time, no.
So it wasn't the talk of the town in the office that the system that we're developing has been very severely criticised in a trade journal?
Not that I recall.
What was your main source of communication? Sorry, that can come down from the screen. Thank you. What was your main method of communication, or source of communication, and interrelationship with Post Office Limited when you were developing Horizon Online?
From what I recall, it was a very joint relationship. Clearly, Fujitsu were doing the majority of the delivery, but their program staff were very often in the same building as us visiting. The test team was a joint test team at the time, so there were always post office staff within Fujitsu as part of the testing of Horizon Online.
You worked, I think, in Bracknell.
Yes.
And was there anyone from Post Office embedded there?
Yes, the test team particularly were. It was the same. It was a joint team, and they were. I believe they had a separate office in. They had an office in our building.
And over the period, the 5-year period, what was there a key meeting or focal point for development, so far as you were concerned?
Sorry.
You refer in your statement to weekly programme boards.
Yes.
Was that the main vehicle by which the project, from your perspective, was progressed?
Internal. So the boards that I refer to in my statement at that time were internal to Fujitsu,
Yep.
and I'm speculating that there were equivalent boards with the customer. I just wasn't involved in them at that time.
That was my next question. What if any, boards or equivalent meetings did you have with your customer?
So I was fairly separate from the customer at that point. There was a lot of people working on the account. My focus was internal on running the development teams. The head of applications and the program director or program manager at the time would have been running the customer meetings or would have been involved in the customer meetings.
In your 5-year period, do you think you ever went to any customer meetings?
Certainly, as the evidence here shows, customer meetings and customer phone calls very regularly during the end of the start of the pilot and rollout. My recollection is that's when I was mostly involved with the customer. It's conceivable or likely that I was involved in more ad hoc meetings up to that point, but I don't recall what they were.
You say in your statement that there was generally good interaction between all the teams involved, including the teams from Fujitsu and the Post Office, and that you were not aware of any technical or operational issues that couldn't be resolved due to poor interactions or relationships amongst individuals or teams working on the project. Mm-hmm. How do you know that if you had relatively little contact with the customer?
So my statement was referring the majority to the internal Fujitsu teams, which I think is how the question was asked. So Yeah, so I don't recall within Fujitsu any challenges between teams that you know, other than the normal human interaction that you get. But, and equally, as I say, as Post Office were there, my awareness was that, you know, we were communicating regularly with them.
And so far as you're concerned, in the development of Horizon Online, no difficulties in relationships either within the Fujitsu team or between the Fujitsu team and Post Office Limited?
As I say in the statement, over and above, it was a difficult programme that was taking longer to deliver than expected, and therefore the customer were clearly very interested in what we were doing to recover time or to what the plan was to deliver Horizon Online.
So the 3-year delay can't have helped relations now?
Yes, of course not. Well, no, of course not.
You tell us in your statement, it's paragraph 33. Which is WITN 0478 0100 at page 15. Just scroll up a little bit, please. Thank you. You say, whilst I was involved in resolving certain technical issues during the initial pilot, I cannot recall if any of these technical issues remained unresolved through the rollout of Horizon Online. It's common practice in any IT project for technical issues that are typically experienced to remain unresolved during rollout, as long as each technical issue is assessed as not causing unexpected business impact. These issues will be resolved in further releases at a later date. In my experience, it's common for parties involved in large IT projects to agree to such arrangements. So there, your recollection doesn't assist you to say whether any issues remained unresolved at the end of rollout.
So no, my recollection doesn't resolve what issues were resolved, what issues were unresolved at the end of rollout. But again, my experience says that there will have been some issues that remained unresolved. But those issues, well, I wouldn't have expected. Well, we didn't, as far as I'm aware, roll it out with issues that were going to cause either our support teams or the customer, or specifically the branches, issues that were not manageable, because it's not in anybody's benefit to do that.
And then just going back to paragraph 30 of your witness statement, please. You tell us in paragraph 30, in summary, that any peak relating to a discrepancy in branch accounts would have caused you concern at the time.
Yes.
Can you recall whether any connection was drawn between incidents which affected legacy Horizon, being discrepancy in branch accounts and Post Office back-end systems, and the issues that were arising in the new product, Horizon Online, to the same effect? I.e., we've got a balancing problem in Horizon Online, and somebody said there is a history of balancing problems with Horizon.
I don't recall exactly. However, as well as any system that can cause a financial discrepancy that's always a top priority issue, regardless of what has happened here. So
I suppose I'm asking a bigger question. Was there any effort to look back at the last decade and see what had happened with legacy Horizon, to see whether it provided any help in the design of the new system?
So I think that would have been well before this point when the system was designed. So here we're talking very much about the implementation of it, and I'm not a technical application architect, so I can only assume that, as we've already established, some of the people were the same, that those lessons would have been would have been learnt at least individually, if not collectively. But I don't know.
One would hope so, wouldn't one?
One would hope so.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Allen. They're the only questions I ask at the moment.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Steen has some questions to ask.
All right, fine.
So good afternoon. I in fact have very few questions. Mr. Allen, I have, just as I said to the chair of the inquiry, very few questions for you. And they in fact concern the document you've been shown earlier, which is FUJ 000-80534, an internal pagination, page 7. And I should have said that I represent sub-postmasters, mistresses and managers, a large number of those that have been affected by the problems with the Horizon system, and so you'll understand that I'm asking questions on their behalf. Now, we should have on the screen at 1.1, under objective, the words that say this: now that Horizon Online has been operational for 12 months, Fujitsu is undertaking a legal review of its compliance with its contract obligations. And let's just pause there. You've mentioned that you knew that there was a contractual obligation to provide material for prosecutions.
So I would probably qualify that I don't believe I knew at the time there was a contractual obligation. I did know that we did it.
Right. So you knew that you were about the business, or your company was about the business of providing information to support prosecutions?
Yes.
All right. Now, having had that in mind, we can see here that the reference is to Horizon Online being operational for 12 months. Do we take it, and do we understand from that, that prior to this document, that there had not been a document that was analysing the quality of the data that's been used for compliance with the prosecution duty that is performed by Fujitsu?
I think the wording of this document, and I have to say, implies to me that this was an audit to ensure that, not that it wasn't in place.
Right. Insofar as you remember the preparation of this document, Mr. Beer already referred to the fact that that there's a Computer Weekly article that is in 2009, and referred to the fact that within this document, the proposal is that this is going to be supplied to KPMG, yes?
Yes.
You've already accepted that there seems to be a logical connection between these events.
Seems to be, but I can't recall it.
Now, the prosecution of any individual is a weighty responsibility, you agree?
Indeed.
And I very much doubt, Mr. Allen, that you would like people to go to prison for things they didn't do.
Absolutely not.
Right. So you must have understood that this is an important obligation that is being carried out by Fujitsu, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you must have understood that this particular document, the preparation of it, is to go to KPMG auditors to ensure, from their perspective, that this is being taken on board properly, yes?
Indeed, yes.
Okay. So these are all fairly important factors being considered at that time.
Yes.
Are you saying that at the time when these matters are being considered by you and your colleagues, that there was absolutely no reference to what was going on in the real world? In other words, the potential set out in the Computer Weekly article that people were being improperly prosecuted?
No, I'm saying I can't recall what led to this document.
Well, are you saying that this was done, this document preparation, these considerations within this document, completely in ignorance of what was being said in the Computer Weekly article? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying I simply cannot recall that that was the reason. I agree with you from the information I'm looking at that the timing does seem that is a possibility, but I honestly
Well, let's
do not
nail
recall.
this down, Mr. Allen. Let's nail this down. At the time when this document was under preparation, was there any discussion about the fact that in the press there had been concerns expressed regarding the reliability of the Horizon system?
As I've said, I can't recall that.
Charlotte, it does seem to be an unlikely position to have reached, that here we have discussions, internal discussions within Fujitsu, regarding the question of satisfying a KPMG, a very well-known firm, that there is a data integrity and audit systems in place to ensure that the reliability of data provided for the support of prosecutions is true and good. It does seem a little unlikely, Mr. Allen, that there weren't such discussions. You're saying you've got no memory
I
whatsoever.
agree with you from what I'm looking at here, but I honestly do not recall the reason for this. It is, clearly as Fujitsu were involved in that, having an independent review that is what that the system was integral, had integrity, it is clearly important regardless of what else was going on. But I agree with you, and I apologise that I can't recall that. But
And just finally, we can see that in the middle of page 7 under 1.1, the purpose of this document is to define the terms of reference for the project and to provide a technical description of measures that are built into Horizon Online to ensure data integrity. And then in a slightly greyer type under that, you see the quote, the
Yes.
focus of the assessment will reflect how, from the initial design of Horizon Online, Fujitsu have built in integrity of transactions as a requirement. Now, that seems to be a quote from another document built into this one.
it does, yes.
So the focus of the assessment will reflect how, from the initial design of Horizon Online, Fujitsu have built in integrity of transactions as a requirement. Now, when Horizon Online was being constructed, was this built in, as that says?
I believe so, yes. And yes.
And your instructions in relation to such? Your
Sorry,
knowledge of
my-
that?
Yes.
I thought you said you didn't know about contractual liability.
So it's a financial system, and all the systems that I've worked on that have, or in fact, I think everything I've worked on has financial integrity. I worked on retail systems at the beginning, so ensuring financial integrity is what any system has to do, or have controls in place to do that. Sorry, I don't think I've answered your question very well.
Excuse me one moment. So thank you. No further questions.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Allen?
I don't think so, sir. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Allen, for providing your written evidence and for coming to the inquiry to answer questions from Mr. Beer and Mr. Steen. I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
So that concludes the business today. Can we say 10 a.m. tomorrow, please?
Yep, certainly.
Thank you very much.
Bye.